Hey guys, Fergus, thank you for joining us. And Matt, nice to see you as well.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah,
Good
so I'll just
afternoon.
good
What
afternoon.
time is
Yeah.
it
Absolutely.
what time is it where you are?
Well, where I am is 3 o'clock, but where Matt is 4:30 as well.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
I just landed in Newfoundland today, actually.
Oh, you're in Newfoundland.
Yes.
Oh, shite. I'm going to be in O'Reilly's on Friday evening about 4:45.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll
But
try to come down.
yeah, I do a regular gig there every Friday and Sunday. So
Wicked.
fortunately, Christmas is Wednesday, so it doesn't interrupt any of my gigs.
Yeah, perfect. You'd hate to have to move Christmas.
Yeah.
So welcome to the Shanty Show, the show about shanties. Today we are joined by two very special guests. We've got Mr. Fergus O'Byrne, and we've also got Mr. Matt Cook, who spent a number of years singing with the Pressgang Mutiny with us here in Toronto as well. So welcome to both of you gentlemen.
Great to be
Thanks
here.
for having me.
So we're gonna start off. Let's start at the top with Fergus here. So, uh, if I understand correctly, you're born in Dublin. Is that right?
Yeah, I give you my life. I give you my life history in a very short spell. Born in Dublin, moved to Canada in 1967. I started singing in 1968, and I always say I quit my day job in 1968, and I've been a full-time musician ever since. So 55 years plugging away at it. I started in a place called the Windsor House, which is now known as McVeigh's, and we ended up, through osmosis, various bands, and we ended up with Ryan's Fancy, myself and Dennis Ryan and Dermot O'Reilly, and decided to move to Newfoundland to go to university, but the music continued, and I did eventually finish up my university stuff, but I've been a full-time touring musician, ever since back 1968. So for
Wow,
better or for so as Matt, you know the expression. Some people here in Newfoundland, you got no better sense. But that's what I've done, and I love doing it. So I still enjoy doing it. So it's great.
that's
Well, we're
fantastic.
glad you did.
Yes,
Well,
indeed.
thank you.
So I'm curious, what was your what are your sort of earliest musical memories of growing up in Dublin? What was your exposure to music firstly, and then what was the
My
sort of
exposure to music was really piano. I sang in church choirs, and I also played. Went to piano lessons. I stuck with it for 7 years, so I did all the Royal Conservatory stuff, and from the ages of 7 to 14. But singing in choirs, I always sang harmony. I always got that, and I believe I believe myself as a natural harmony singer, because whenever I sing along to songs, I'm always singing harmonies, and that sort of leads into the shanty sort of stuff. But uh, but then my father introduced me to the mandolin and then the guitar, and I just sort of fell into the. And when in my mid-teens, really was the big folk revolution they call it. Like Bob Dylan and the Clancy Brothers and Joan Baez and Tom Paxton, all of that. So in those days, when you went to parties, the crowd you hung out with, we were all of the same ilk. If you didn't sing, you were listening. It's so extraordinary how things have come around. How things have changed nowadays. You're going to a party and everybody's on their phone,
Mm.
but in those days, people were interacting and singing and playing and just carrying on. And so when I came over to when I come over to Canada, I somebody heard about me that I was playing around at parties and around the Irish scene, and somebody invited me down to play in the Windsor House at the time and to back up somebody in the Windsor House. So I, being the very sort of cautious Irish person, I called Better Business Bureau, and they said, "No, well, maybe you shouldn't go down there." But I went anyway. So and that was the beginning of it all. And I was playing guitar at the time, and we were in a band, the Sons of Air, and there was three of us playing guitar. And I I said, this is crazy. You know, we're all flailing away on these guitars, and none of us are great at it. So I went up to a pawn shop up the road and bought myself a 5-string banjo
Okay.
and taught myself how to play the 5-string. So and then from then I just sort of wandered into different instruments. But primarily, I consider myself a vocalist, and you know, I use instruments to enhance what I do vocally.
Wonderful. And what would have been the like the folk scene in Dublin around the 60s? I'm a bit curious about that because the one of the big influences on me was the Chieftains. And I was looking that up today. The Chieftains formed in 1962. Of course, Sean, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly here, but Sean Oriada or Sean
Sean
Oriada.
O'Riordan,
Yeah.
Sean
So
O'Riordan, yeah.
he was a very big you know, he's instrumental to the folk revival of Irish traditional music
Yeah.
radio era. And so what was this something that was it sort of did it feel like an Irish folk revival, or did it seem like there was already like a strong scene going on in Dublin in the 60s?
No, that was really the start. Well, like when the Clancy brothers sort of made it, and they really sort of made it big in America,
Mhm.
and then sort of came back and were recognized in Ireland. But the Dubliners came along around the same time, and then Sean O'Riordan sort of really revolutionized the whole thing by introducing, you know, he was a classical player,
Mhm.
and he had all these arrangements in his head. So when Sean O'Riordan formed the band, it was called Kyotori Coolan, and that was really the basis of the Chieftains. Paddy Maloney was in that band, and Sean Keane, and there was a guy by the name of Sean O'Riordan, singer from Kerry, and so they were very, very instrumental minded, and did a lot of arranging of traditional airs. And Sean O'Riordan wrote his own stuff as well. So that was kind of that branch of that music. Then went on, and you know, eventually you were ending up with the Planksties and Sweeney's men and down that road. Whereas, you know, the Dubliners spawned to a certain degree, I say, bands like you know, the Wolf Tones and in that direction. So it was and I was kind of interested in it all. I just loved the music, and I've always been, you know, music in my head ever since I was a kid. That's all I've seemed to have always. That's all I've ever been interested in, is just music, and especially trad music. But at the time, as soon as I started doing, you know, singing professionally in Toronto, I really latched on to a lot of the English singers, like bands like the Copper Family, the Watersons, Steel I Span, and all that stuff that had all this great harmony singing. And a lot of the songs that they were singing, especially the Watersons and the Copper Family, they were singing this a cappella stuff that I really, really latched onto as well. So between the jigs and the reels of it all, I just have a wide listening scope in terms of where I go with music. So when I do gigs, you know, even today now, like on my own, I just tend to choose songs that I like to sing, and not necessarily songs at the sea. They're not all songs at the sea, but obviously living where I do in Newfoundland, you have this sort of a call of the sea, so to speak, in terms of telling stories about people who work on the water.
Yeah, Stefan's going to be kicking himself that he's had to miss this interview. He really comes out of that English tradition, and a lot of the names that you're mentioning were big influences on him as well. So,
Oh yeah, no, it's just been, it's phenomenal. The influence they had on my singing and
right.
my approach to music, as opposed, you know, and the Irish stuff as well. But you know, that Sweeney's Men and Planksty and Bothy Band and all that stuff mixed in. It's just everything
Yeah,
is just so. It's just great. I mean, it's all good.
absolutely. And the young tradition springs to mind as well as one
Oh
of those.
yeah, Peter Bellamy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I do have some questions about that, but I've got a few sort of questions which are trying to sort of fill in these gaps here. So, Toronto, why Toronto of all the places in the world? What was the draw for?
Well, that's another interesting story, because my parents moved to the States about a year before I did. And I had three young siblings, sisters, who moved to the States with them. and they ended up in Detroit. And my intention was to move to the States. 19 years old, I was going to follow the family. But the Vietnam War was on.
Okay.
So we decided as a family that it would probably be a better idea if I lived in Toronto, where I could have access to visiting with them back and forward. So that's what I did. Weekends, every 2 or 3 weekends, I'd pop on the bus and head down to Detroit for a weekend and stuff like that when I was working in Toronto. So that's really how I ended up in Toronto. And then we ended up touring in Newfoundland with a band called Sullivan's Gypsies, and really fell in love with the place. And then discovered that we all could get into university as mature students. By that time, I was over 21 years old, and I could get into university as a mature student. I didn't have to have the grades that I didn't have. So we kind of said, well, let's go to Newfoundland. We go to university, pay our way through university, and then, circumstance and luck and just being in the right place at the right time, Ryan's Fancy happened and the television shows. And so it sort of pushed my career in that direction.
Very cool.
Were you aware of like the cultural similarities between Newfoundland and Ireland at the time? Like when you went there?
I'll tell you, when I first came to Newfoundland, the first impression I have is I'm halfway home.
Yeah.
But at the time, Newfoundland had all the North American amenities that still weren't in Ireland. Like
right.
central heating, fridges, not stove. We had stoves in Ireland, but you know what I mean. It was more of a North American material culture, but the actual culture, the traditional culture was Irish and English.
Yeah.
And so yes, I felt very much at home in Newfoundland. And when we started the first gigs we did, Ryan's Fancy in the Strand Lounge at the Avondale Mall, we were booked in for a week, and by the Wednesday night, the place was packed, and people were up on the tables, but everybody was singing along to a lot of the songs we were singing, and that was a big eye opener. In Toronto, we were getting some sort of a reaction to that, but not to the same extent that this was something that was going on that I wasn't aware of in Newfoundland. I'd never heard of Newfoundland before I ever went there. I went to Toronto. I'd never heard of Newfoundland in Ireland, because being from Dublin, you wouldn't hear about it. But it was extraordinary. I mean, it was just, and especially up the shore, up the southern shore, the Cape Shore, and all that stuff with all the Irish. But then since moving here, I've learned the whole English connection as well through Jim Payne and traveling around the island and Labrador. So it's as you and I know, it's the best place in the world.
Oh yeah, love to get back.
Sorry, go on. Yeah, go on, Matt.
I was gonna ask, do you feel like you guys were doing like a sort of a style of the music that people weren't doing here at the time? Because I'm sure there was traditional Irish songs and Newfoundland songs that existed. You guys maybe had a different spin with the Ryan's Fancy.
We were just a spirited band, and we weren't commercial enough. Like, I always sort of think, the Irish Rovers, great group, and they did fantastic work in what they did. But I always felt that they were more commercial than we were. We tended to be commercial to a certain degree, but we still explored the music of Newfoundland. And that's one of the things we did, was we very quickly included a lot of the local music in our repertoire. And then the other thing was that we were all hippies. I'd hair down to halfway down my arm and big fuzzy beard. We were all like that, long haired. So we were appealing to the young crowd from the university, but yet the type of music that we were singing was appealing to the older generation as well. So it was, we obviously didn't plan it like that. We weren't thinking along those lines, but that's just the way it happened, that we were appealing to all facets of society, all ages in society. And then, of course, with the television shows, I mean, they just catapulted us into every, home in Newfoundland and eventually into the Maritimes and across Canada. But, then you got to remember back then, in Newfoundland, there were only two stations. You either watched NTV or you watched CBC, and we were on CBC and one television in the house. So whatever the parents wanted to watch, that's what everybody was watching. So, whether people had grew used to us or liked us from the beginning, that was it. You watched Brian's Fancy. I think we were on before the hockey game. So, it was just, we were just part of the household, really. So it's nowadays, of course, people are streaming this and that and the other thing. So that it's totally different kettle of fish these days.
I'm curious about Toronto. When you arrived, you said you played mostly sort of house parties and that kind of thing. So that would be sort of within the Irish community, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But what was the music scene like in Toronto? And what was Toronto like in general? Because from what I hear, Toronto was pretty buttoned down in the 19th.
Oh my gosh. Yes, you couldn't get a drink if you didn't have French fries.
Okay.
Certain places, especially on a Sunday, you couldn't go into a bar except you ordered food. It was pretty strict. I mean, the laws were pretty strict. I was working in an office. I lived it out in Scarborough, and all I remember is a bus and a subway to where I worked, and to go down to the pub where I was playing, the same thing, a bus and the subway, and it was just traveling around Toronto. It was just a sprawling metropolis. I didn't hang out in many places. The only place I really knew was the Windsor House, and then we did some gigs at the what was the name of the place up on top of Yonge Street? I can't remember now. And we also did some gigs up at the Maple Leaf Ballroom, because at that time there was a partnership between the guy who owned, McVeigh, and also this other guy, I can't remember his name, owned the Maple Leaf Ballroom. And the Maple Leaf Ballroom were bringing in show bands from Ireland. And the show band phenomenon was huge. I mean, it's just extraordinary what they did in Ireland. But anyway, so the show bands were coming in. So we would be hired to go up and play a set in between the show bands.
Okay.
We do a half-hour set. And that, again, we were exposing ourselves to a larger audience, because the Maple Leaf Ballroom, would hold 1,000 people. It was just a huge, huge building, and very much like the show band and the dance halls in Ireland at the time. Just these extraordinarily huge barns of places that held thousands of people who were interested in rock and roll, and but the show bands, they were doing a bit of Irish too. Like the Creighton show band, I suppose, would be an example, but not a great example, in that the show bands from Ireland, they were playing a lot of the pop stuff that was becoming. You'd hear if a pop song became #1 in America, within a week, a show band would have recorded it, and they would be on the charts in Ireland with it. I mean, it was just, and fabulous musicians. And they play everything. They play country, they play Irish, they play jigs and reels, they play Elvis Presley, so it was all over the place. But I never really got into the rock scene at all. I was just totally enamored and taken with folk.
Right. I was curious about the New Windsor Tavern, or McVeigh's Irish Pub. It was the first Irish pub ever in Toronto. It opened in 1962. From what I understood, the city of Toronto, which was fairly Protestant at the time, didn't really want an Irish pub in the city. There's a pretty big pushback against it. And yet, from what I hear, was seemed to be very, very popular from the get-go, and there used to be music on both floors at one point, on the main floor.
Well, what happened? Yeah, what happened was actually, in the early days when we started playing there, we used to play downstairs, and they didn't have an upstairs, and but the place was just getting so crowded that I guess, thinking back, maybe we felt that the crowd who were in the pub weren't really listening to what we were doing. So we said, well, look, we asked Jimmy, what about putting tables upstairs and let us go upstairs, and so those people who want to hear music will come upstairs and hear it. But it very soon developed into just an upstairs and downstairs pub. But I think we, the Sons of Erin, were the first band to play upstairs in McVeigh's.
Okay.
And you know, I remember the tablecloths. They were white and red tartan tablecloths, but the beer was slung from up downstairs with no bar upstairs.
Wow.
You had to come up and down, up and down, up and down with beer, slinging the beer, you know. So, you know, we had Sons of Erin. I have a picture of it actually. There were four of us. I played banjo, Dermot played guitar, and we both sang. And then Ralph O'Brien played and sang guitar, and then Gary Kavanagh, and we sang into two microphones. You know,
Okay.
and so this, you know, I've the picture of me with, you know, I always had my banjo right almost under my chin, and the same with Dermot. And it was, you know, I'm not sure what it sounded like, but it, you know, people thought it was great at the time. No monitors, of course, no, you know, none of
Wow.
that stuff. Yeah, it
Okay.
was just
Wow.
wild.
Well, I have to say the painting of Sullivan's Gypsies is still on the wall at McVeigh's all these years later. So
I wondered about that, you know, because I wrote the lads, geez, I wrote them but a couple of years ago, I think, and I asked them if it was still there, would they take a picture of it and send it to me? And I never ever heard back, and I wrote them a
oh,
couple of times.
Mm.
so you
If
know
you
what?
ever go down,
Yeah,
if you ever go down,
I'm playing the session there Friday and Saturday, so I'll happily take a
oh
photo and
wow,
send it to you.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, take a picture and send it to me, please. Love to
Yeah,
have it.
happily, happily. That's a place I've played with Matt as well. We've played with Michael Darcy. I've also played there with Duncan Cameron, who I think you might know.
Oh
Duncan was
yeah, no, Duncan,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I remember
yeah,
playing there with Duncan when I was 15 or 16 or so, and with
yeah.
Michael, of course. So yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
old institution. It got sold about a year ago. But Paul and Brendan, the grandson, are still sort of they're around for the time being. So uh
Oh,
but
okay.
if you see it now, the condos have sort of encroached everywhere around it. So
Yeah.
yeah, Toronto's it's changing pretty rapidly. I also wanted to mention your song Candlelight and Wine. This is a song I originally heard Matt singing, and I immediately just love the song.
No,
So
that's a Dermot O'Reilly song.
oh, that Dermot. Okay.
Yeah, Dermot wrote that. Yeah, I've never written. I write music, but I've never written lyrics.
Okay.
I leave that to Jim Payne.
Oh, I see. Apologies. I got that wrong then.
No, yeah, no. Dermot did the right. Dermot, he didn't write a lot, but what he wrote was really good.
Mhm.
Like Candlelight and Wine and Children's Winter and West Country Lady. He really he had a really nice way of putting things, but he just didn't, unfortunately, write enough at the time.
Okay.
What was
Ash-
what was the process like for like picking what tunes you wanted to arrange, and if someone had written a song, they bring it to the band, and would you guys kind of workshop it and figure out an arrangement that worked for everybody, or what was that kind of like getting the repertoire together?
Yeah, pretty well. You know, we and that was the interesting thing about the band. Also about Ryan's Fancy was that we were all coming from different musical backgrounds. Like
Mm.
Dermot grew up in Dublin, and he grew up a huge fan of Buddy Holly. And if you
Mm.
listen to his guitar playing, he had that really rock and roll style of playing guitar.
Few,
Dennis grew up in Tipperary and came from a very traditional background of you know, three-quarter time waltzes and old story songs like like the the Rosamund Coin and Newport Town and Starlogie Bay, those that type of song. And I came from the background of listening to, you know, the Dubliners and then Sweeties Men and the English band, Steel Ice Band and the Copper Family. So between the three of us, we were all bringing a different blend of music to it. And then Dermot was a fan of Tom Paxton as well. That he brought that into the band as well. But myself and Dermot in particular, we were both natural harmony singers again. Like I never had difficulties figuring out harmonies to songs.
mm.
And the same for Dermot. And fortunately, Dermot always sang the lower harmony, and I sang the higher harmonies. So around singing around Dennis, we would we'd be able to get that three-part harmony stuff. And even then, even when we recorded, like if I was the lead singer, again, I'd always harmonize to myself, and Dermot would sing a lower harmony, or if Dermot was singing, he'd sing his own harmony, and I'd sing a higher harmony. So, and add Dennis's voice. And then we got James Keane in the band, the accordion player, who was brother to Sean Keane from the Chieftains. He came up from New York for a few years, and he added another element. This fantastic accordion player. So yeah, and we'd you'd bring a song to the band and you'd sing it and try it out and arrange it, and if it worked, it worked, and if it didn't work with the audience, you just kind of, it's like anything, like even when I'm doing solo stuff, I'll try it out and I'll sing it. If I like the song, I'm going to sing it. But if it doesn't go over with the audience, it'll sort of go on the back burner. But I'll always drag it out when there's nobody in the pub. I'll sing it.
Yeah, we all know that.
Yeah, it's playing in pubs. I've been doing it for all my life. Now I love doing concerts and stuff, but the pub scene here in town is in St. John's is good. And O'Reilly's for me. I've been playing in O'Reilly's for 29 years.
Wow. Okay.
Myself and Dermot played together, and then of course when he died, I just continued as a soloist. And it's the only pub in town that I play in as a solo artist, and I have a regular gig there if I'm in town. But the way the arrangement I have with Brenda O'Reilly is that if I'm going out of town, she just get somebody else. So especially before COVID, when I was touring a lot, I was in and out of the pub. But not so much now. What I do now, myself and Jim Payne, we do a lot of visiting in schools through arts outreach programming, delivering cultural programming to schools around the island. So that takes me away as well. So, and the odd tour here there, I'm supposed to go out in the spring. Myself and Jim are supposed to go out to Vancouver for a week or so, doing some stuff out there. So whatever comes along, it's
yeah.
If anybody offers me money to go somewhere and play, that's where I'm gone. Basically.
I like that plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that really hasn't caught on here in Newfoundland, is the house concert.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it's just a lack of population. There's just not the population to support something like that, especially in rural Newfoundland. I mean, in St. John's, it could work, but then, of course, you've got so much other entertainment facilities in St. John's that people will go other places. But in rural Newfoundland, the population, I don't think, is there to support an ongoing, like say the out west or in Ontario, you've got those house concert tours that artists can sort of latch in and do a string of 7 or 15 or so in the run of a week and a half, 2 weeks or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good little circuit there that's established now.
Oh yeah.
They just got a text from Stephanie. He's asking, did you ever perform at the Fiddler's Green Folk Club with the Friends of Fiddler's Green?
I did perform there. I didn't actually before. I sang with them. I knew them. Not very well. I'd run into them every now and then, but again, I guess in Toronto, when I was playing in Toronto, we were playing every weekend, and it was just a really busy schedule. And it's the same here in Newfoundland. When I came here, it's just when you're a full-time musician, and you tend to be always either doing gigs or looking for gigs. And the only time I really run into musicians on a regular basis are at festivals. Like, for example, myself and Jim were over to Celtic Colours there in October, and had a great time. Met some great people and people I hadn't seen in years, and it was nice to hang out with them. But other than that, when you're doing on the road doing gigs, or if you're in town doing gigs, I'm out twice a week, twice in the week, so I tend to sort of stay a low profile. Although I do go down to the Ship Inn the folk club. Every Wednesday night they have a folk night, and the last weekend of every month, they have a folk night. They have a session, and my son is a great player. He plays accordion and fiddle and concertina. So he'll be down at the session. So me and him will go down for that. This, in fact, for Matt on this Wednesday night, by the way, down at the ship, Dave Penny is hosting the session.
Excellent.
Yeah, do you know Dave, the comedian guy, funny guy?
Yeah, I know of him. I don't know if I know him personally.
Oh, okay, no, but I mean, have you heard his stuff? He's not going to be doing his comedic stuff there. He plays accordion as well, so there's a bunch of us going down for that. So cool. That's on Wednesday night. So if you got nothing better to do, down for
that sounds great.
And songs are sung, by the way. I always insist on singing songs. That's
okay.
Well, so I'm gonna just jump forward a little bit. So 1971, Ryan's Fancy, you guys relocate to St. John's, to Newfoundland, to attend Memorial University, and shortly after you've got the TV show you mentioned, and then there was from what I was reading online, there's a second series with Tommy Makem as well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, and that was the extraordinary thing. Again, two TV channels on the go at the time. We were asked to co-host with Tommy Makem out of Hamilton, out of the Irish Canadian Club in Hamilton, and it was broadcast on CHCH, but syndicated on CTV across the country.
Go the border roving with you, fair maid. The roving, be my Ryan. I'll go the border roving with you, fair maid. My love and I, we took a walk, mark well what I to say. In love and I, we took a walk, and we did more than sit and talk. I'll go the border roving with you, fair maid. The roving, be my Ryan. I'll go the border roving with you, fair maid. I took her out and I spent me pay, mark well what I do say. I took her out and I spent me pay, and then this made it fade away. I'll go no more roving with you, fair maid. I'm roving, since roving's been my Ryan. I'll go no more roving with you, fair maid. Do it again. I'm roving, since roving's been my Ryan. I'll go no more roving with you, fair maid. Woo! Thank you very much. You're very welcome to the show. Those three fellas singing over there are known as Ryan's Fancy. My name is Tommy Makem. We have a very special guest with us tonight, a man that's known and respected in the folk music circles all over Europe, from Dundee to Denmark and back to Dublin again. On his first trip over to North America, would you welcome Al O'Donnell, please? You been to Avondale?
So yes, we would fly up to Hamilton every 3 or 4 weeks and tape about 6 to 8 shows in 2 weeks. And it was more of an entertainment show than what with Ryan's Fancy on CBC. We were doing more exploring and featuring what you term today as tradition bearers, like people like Rufus Ginchard, Minnie White, Emile Benoit, Pious Power from up in Southeast Brighton. Then we extended it over into the Maritimes with people from Atlantic Canada. But with the Tommy Makem show, we were flying people in from Ireland, like Paddy Riley, Trinity Donal. In fact, I could be wrong, but I think the very first time that the Chieftains appeared on television in North America was on the Tommy Makem Ryan's Fancy show.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I think that was I think that I'm right in saying that, but I could be corrected for it, but I believe it was one of the very first times there were one anyway. And with Paddy Riley, Trinity Donald, I'm trying to think, some people out of Quebec, Jean Carignan and Philippe
Yeah.
Bruneau, accordion player. So it was it was a variety show basically, and it was great fun, and learned a lot from Tommy.
Yeah.
I always credit Tommy with a lot of my background in terms of just knowing how to present myself on stage. Tommy was a master.
Yeah, he's a legend. Yeah, I got to see him once at Hugh's room in Toronto.
Oh yeah, he was fabulous, just amazing.
Absolutely. Now I'm curious if I can accuse you of something here. From what I understand, you're sort of credited with embedding shanties into the Newfoundland folk repertoire. I don't know if that's something you would agree with or not.
Well, I can't. Yes, to a certain degree, I suppose. And this probably comes from Sean McCann to a certain degree and Great Big Sea. But I mean, I just love group singing. I don't get to do enough of it because obviously there's not the singers around that used to be around. But to stand up with a bunch of people singing a cappella, shanties or any song, it's just such a great treat. As you guys know, you stand in the middle of a bunch of other singers and you hear all these voices and the harmonies. It's just a treat. So I've just always loved to do that, whether it was a shanty or whether it was just a song with a good chorus in it. It always worked. So, and I suppose I got the reputation then of being this sort of singer who would sing at the drop of a hat at any session, especially where I could get other people to sing along with me.
Right. And that's one of the great things of the shanty form, of course. It's easy to get people to jump in and sing along.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And it's just such a joyous thing. I mean, I've got this passion for voices. My latest this is going down off the road a little bit, but my latest listening thing is I've been listening a lot to polyphonic singing from Georgia.
oh yeah, that's interesting
I don't know
stuff.
if you've heard it.
Yeah, a little
If
bit.
you've heard it, I mean that again, the harmonies and just the tonal stuff that's going on there, it's just extraordinary, and it it sort of leads me in a direction that you don't expect the harmonies that they're singing, and yet they work. So it's getting me to think outside my thinking box in terms of singing harmonies and stuff like that. So, but and Mongolian singing, anything that's polyphonic or a cappella is just to me is just fabulous. And unfortunately, working with Jim Payne, Jim Payne has exactly the same feelings. And in fact, just to jump back in years, it's 30 years now. Myself and Jim have been playing together, and the way we started was we were on the organizing committee of the folk festival in St. John's, and we had we were booking the talent and stuff like that, and running the stage as well. And I think it was a Saturday afternoon. There was supposed to be an act on for a 40-minute act, and I don't know who they were, but anyway, they never made it. So we were around and we didn't have our instruments with us. And so what are we going to do? And so we hadn't worked together before, but we knew each other. So we said, well, let's go on stage, and I'll lead off the song and I get the audience, teach the audience how to sing it. And then you lead off a song, and we know each other's repertoire, and we started singing, and we did about a 40-minute set like that. And we got off the stage, and somebody came up to us and said, do you have a CD of that? Have you ever done anything like that, recorded it? I said, no. And they said, well, you should. And we sort of started working together since from that. And that's how the Wave Over Wave album came out. And then we just continued on playing together. And so it's, again, to go back to Jim and myself, primarily we consider ourselves vocalists. And beyond that, then we just use instrumentation to enhance or to, to work with what we do vocally.
I'm curious how you got exposed to shanties in the first place. Like, what was your first interaction with shanties?
I'd say going back to, Copper Family, the Watersons, Steel Ice Band, all those English groups, and the Voice Squad out of Ireland.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, they were fabulous too. And I saw the one that you guys did with Coda, which
Oh yes,
I never heard of them, but they
I was
were,
going to ask about that. Yeah.
it's just great to hear them. But yeah, to go back, really, Steel Ice Band and the Copper Family in particular, what they were doing, and that song for all seasons. There's a great collection. I don't know if you're familiar with it. There's a great book goes along with it as well. It's called or you can find everything on YouTube, but it's on YouTube. But the book itself is a background story written by the Copper Family, talking about the reasons for the songs and the songs they sing, and talking about they were a farming family basically. And so they sang a lot of songs about farming and about the lifestyle that they were involved in. But of course, they had they had songs at sea as well involved in their repertoire.
I was going to ask you. Yeah, I was going to ask about like your repertoire of sort of shanty songs. Would it be a mixture of stuff that you heard when you were younger from these groups and stuff you picked up along the way, or would you...
to a certain degree, as you and I know, there's not really a lot of shanties there are no shanties in Newfoundland really that are home based. I mean, the shanties come from all over the world. If you sort of listen to shanties, they're all the same in Polish and Chinese. They're they're the same shanties basically. They're work sounds, and what I find, what people consider shanties are not actually shanties. They're songs that were sung at sea, but they're not shanties. They're not actual work songs. So if you really want to get down to the specifics of shanties, then you're talking about a very, very narrow, specific form of song, which is a work song, as we know. But then the other songs that are sung that people outside, let's say, shanty singers just term as shanty songs. They're not shanties.
Yeah.
And then the way they're sung also, like a prime example of that is the one we sang, myself and Jim recorded on the Wave Over Wave album, was Heave Away. And we got that from Pious Power from Southeast Bite. Now, I don't know where he got it from, but that was his version. But his version, of course, was come get your duds in order, forward bound across the water, heave away, me jollies, heave away. That tempo, a work tempo that you can work to. Then half a dozen bands in Newfoundland got it. And come get your duds in order, forward bound across the water, heave away. I figured you get across the Atlantic Ocean in jig time singing a shanty like that. Yeah, so it's and that's fine. I don't mind people saying calling songs of the sea shanties, but they're not, as we know, they're not shanties. I mean, songs I sing like I just started singing again. I used to sing it years ago. Is a great song by John Connolly, Grimsby Lads. It's just a fabulous song describing fishing. Now, somebody who's not into songs that we sing might consider it a shanty, but it's not. It's a song that would be sung in the forecastle in the old days, and the same with a lot of the stuff that I do. I'm just trying to think offhand. Oh yeah, there's another song I got from Pious, and again, it's a version of an old English maritime song. Is the Liverpool Pilot. Oh, Liverpool, England is a place I love dear, where I spent all me money on whiskey and beer. Again, it's to the all the untrained ear would that's a sea shanty, but it's not. It's It's a song of the sea.
Certainly carries the common themes.
Oh yeah, it's all got to do with being at sea and same as another prime example that's termed a shanty is "Get Up, Jack John, Sit Down." Come along, you jolly brave boys. There's lots of grog in the jar. That was written for vaudeville in New York.
Okay.
However, it was connected to a Newfoundlander. I'm not sure if it was a Newfoundlander or a person who was born of Newfoundland people who contributed that song to the vaudeville and then became a song of the sea that that people sing.
One of the songs.
Sorry,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I heard a similar thing with the Good Ship Kangaroo started as a music hall kind of song as well.
Yeah, and that's when you're thinking that's going back a long, long time. Back in the 60s, music hall was close, but back now today, 2023, 2024, we're a long ways from vaudeville. That's 100 years, so it's
Yeah.
I was gonna ask about the Roxamere Sheen was one that I really liked hearing your version of, and I sang it with the Pressgang for a while, like an a cappella version of it.
Oh wow, I'd like to hear that.
I love that song. It's so beautiful.
Yes, Al Pittman wrote it, and then it's just I think Pat Byrne put the melody to it. But it's a really, really great song, and it's just there's another one that Al wrote was the West Moon. My son's band recorded a band called the Freels. They recorded it back in the day, and was about 10 years ago now since that band was on the go. But no, Al had some great words to say coming from Mary Sheen, and he's a great understanding of the culture and what had gone on with resettlement and all that stuff. But yes, the Roxamere Sheen is really good.
Yeah, it's like a whaling. Sounds like a
whaling
trade.
Rosaroo, there was a whaling station, albeit a small one. There was a whaling station in Placentia Bay where they processed whale in the day. The same as crab factory or lobster factory. They were processing whale.
Yeah.
Don't tell Peter.
They already don't like us.
Now you mentioned sort of shanties from all over the world. You mentioned Polish shanties. And we were singing over in Poland in the summer of 2023. And there's a really interesting thing going on over there where there's a sort of shanty explosion. And as you say, some of the songs that aren't really shanties are lumped together in the shanty repertoire. But more interesting to me, they've translated like every obscure Irish folk song you could think of into Polish, and they're mixing in these sort of jigs and reels and Irish tunes played with a slight bit of Slavic lilt into this thing, and they're calling it all shanty, which they spell Szanty.
Okay.
And it's become this really interesting phenomenon. And I guess one of the things I was sort of curious about, and I'd like to get your take on it, is why do you think, why is this sort of there's this connection people seem to have with the Irish folk music and the shanties? Because even to myself, like the first time I heard some of the first shanties I heard would have been the Clancy Brothers, and I just kind of assumed that's part of the Irish folk repertoire. And it was only later on I realized, well, this comes from a different place actually, but it fits very well together.
Yeah, and when you think about it, a lot of the songs that the Clancy Brothers sang were actually either English or Scottish.
Right, like
so I think I think the singers, for me, and then anyway, I don't I don't kind of look at an Irish. I'd say it has to be Irish for me to sing it, or Newfoundland for me to sing it. That's where I go. But I sing a lot of English songs. But the shanty thing and the Irish thing, and the fascination with Irish folk music. I mean, it's not only in Poland. I mean, there are amazing traditional players, like say in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the players in Japan are just extraordinary. And in fact, it's interesting because talking about my son Fergus, he's Fergus Brown O'Byrne. One of his first times in Ireland, I think he was 19 at the time, and he had his fiddle with him, and there was a fleadh on in Ennis, and they were at the fleadh. I was over in Orkney doing some gigs, but himself and his mother were there, and they invited him up on the stage to play a few tunes with the group that were there. But the only other person they invited up on stage was a young person from Japan who was playing fiddle tunes as well. So there's just this fascination with maybe that the Irish people are just good salespeople in terms of their music, but I mean, everywhere you go in the world, Irish music is, and not only the Kamalia stuff that used to be the only stuff that people listen to, but I mean, you know, I think Riverdance was probably a huge part of that whole explosion. And then beyond that, then just the musicianship of bands of the trad bands like Lunasa and Bothy Band and Donal Lunny and Andy Irvine and Paul Brady. They've done so much fabulous work that people see the value of it. And you know, another band is out of Donegal. What's their name?
Oh, with Kathy Jordan?
No, that's Dervish. That's another band. But there's another one, Enya, for example.
Oh yeah.
Now Enya's sister is in this band out of Donegal, and I can't remember the. But they do this kind of world type music, but yet it's got this Celtic overtone to it.
Right.
So it's just extraordinary explosion of Irish music around the world, and I think the marketing and what's to me is so big in Ireland is the idea that, you know, you can go to university, you can get a degree in performance, and you know, you can do a master's in traditional performance, and it's recognizing the quality and the ability of a country to be able to establish itself as an entity of music that's really recognizable. I've been saying for so long that especially Newfoundland should have had years ago, they should have developed a musical entity in the university from teaching Newfoundland music as opposed to classical first, and then, you know, I've always, you know, to a certain degree, I've found that, you know, that the idea that the classical musicians will look at what we do as musicians, traditional musicians, as, oh well, okay, that's the stuff we'll have a bit of a party and we'll have the ugly sticks and we'll do this and that after we've done the serious music, as opposed to recognizing what we do as traditional musicians as being a very serious, albeit fun, but still it's great depth to it, and the stories that it tells is just extraordinary.
Absolutely.
Harry.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the Chieftains when they got started. You know, the government didn't really want to promote that traditional image of Ireland. They were looking to, you know, a modern, forward-looking kind of thing. And I mean, if you look at the amount of collaborations that the Chieftains alone did, and, you know, playing with bands from all over the world, it's really remarkable. And when you're talking about your interest in Georgian polyphony now, it made me think of Andy Irvine hearing Greek and Macedonian music and getting obsessed with it, and sort of fusing that with the Irish tradition and bringing that in and making that connection. And I think even Riverdance had a sort of an odd tempo Macedonian sounding piece at one point. So it's interesting to hear those reverberations continue.
Oh yeah, no, and you know, it's to me it's all music. You know,
Exactly.
It's either good music or bad music, and a lot of it's good. And no matter where it comes from, and no matter how much you fuse it with other stuff, as long as it's working, I mean, it's you know, you can't sort of stop trad music at a certain point and say, okay, this is definitively trad music. We're not going to explore it any further. We're going to keep for the day.
Yeah.
And even with shanty singing, you know, singing shanties and the up tempo, like that Wellerman thing was. I mean, that was an amazing phenomenon when it happened. And I do one of my projects that I've been doing here in Newfoundland is a thing called Young Folk at the Hall, that trying to attract young people to folk music and to exploring singing and traditional music and folk music from here. But inevitably when they come together, there's all sorts of interest coming. But the last time we had one about 3 or 4 weeks ago. One of the groups that we had put together, the Wellerman, was a big hit with them, and it's a good song. It's just got overblown. I mean, and who knows, TikTok, it's just mad.
Well, people need a gateway in. People need a gateway into the music.
That's true.
And if it's a song like that gets them in, and then they hear other things that they like, and it's a positive thing for the tradition to.
And that's what I always say. Like when myself and Jim go into schools and do what we do, you never know what's going on until years later. And out of, say, 20 kids in the classroom, if 10 of them kind of like what you're doing and stick with, the more commercial sort of stuff, but then if 3 or 4 of them explore it even a little bit further and delve more further into the trad stuff and into music beyond just the Rant and We'll Roar or whatever. That's the job of work done, and that's the way it's always going to be. You're never ever going to get 20 kids in the classroom all sort of, wow, that's the greatest music in the world kind of thing. But if you can grab 4 or 5 of them, they're going to. And we've seen it happen. Like I've had both myself and Jim, we've been visiting schools now for, 20, 30 odd years, 40 years now. I've had guys come up to me in the bar and they want to buy me a drink and, get chatting. I said, yeah, I'm living in Alberta. Man, he says, I never ever realized how much I love the music till I went away. And I remember you guys were in my classroom and you sang Jack Was Every Inch a Sailor. And here I am now. I never thought much of it at the time, but 30 years later, I love it kind of thing, so it's that sort of gives you hope for the future.
Yeah, you never know when you're planting those seeds, No,
you don't. That's I guess for any teacher, anybody involved in education, you just don't know what's going on in the kid's mind. But there's always that sort of, you're going to create a spark, and that's a great thing to hear.
That's true. Well, I have to say, in my early 20s, I heard Great Big Sea do General Taylor, and that absolutely floored me. Just the sound of the harmonies, and it just absolutely hit me like a ton of bricks.
Well, a pint of rum for every man, walk 'em along, John, carry 'em along, and a bloody great big barrel for the shanty man, carry him to his burying ground. Tell me where you store me, walk 'em along, John, carry 'em along, tell me where you store me, carry him to his burying ground.
And I've heard, Alan Doyle and Sean McCann refer back to you. So I looked up a couple of quotes. I hope you don't mind if I read some of these quotes here. So Alan Doyle, he said he learned a bunch of sea shanties primarily from Sean, Bob, and Daryl in Great Big Sea, and from masters like Fergus O'Byrne in St. John's. So that's some high praise for Doyle there. And then another quote here from the Newfoundland Herald, saying Fergus O'Byrne and Dermot O'Reilly of Ryan's Fancy fame were 2 of McCann's shanty heroes. And then Sean McCann goes on to say, Fergus is the best man that I've ever seen and I had access to. I'm friends with them, but these are my rock stars growing up. So it's always been part of my being, and I've been collecting these shanties. I've never stopped. So again, high praise from the shanty man, Sean McCann there.
I appreciate that. Appreciate it.
I was curious.
I'm only one in a long chain.
What's that?
I'm only one in a long chain of singers.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I was also curious about Sean McCann and his new album. We got to talk to him a little bit about what he's been working on, and he pointed out the connection with the lumber camps and the sort of lumber songs, and saying that, you know, a shanty in North America is a lumber camp as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I haven't heard it. I haven't seen Sean in ages, and I haven't really kept up with what he's. I mean, I hear about him every now and then, but I'm not on social media, so I don't see a lot of stuff that's floating by. But you know, it's if it wasn't for the lumber camps in Newfoundland, a lot of the songs that we sing and that we know wouldn't be around, because that's where most people learned songs and brought them back to their communities.
Hmm.
Like in isolated communities around Newfoundland, all the men, not all the men, but the men who worked in the lumber camps, when they had time off, they were singing, and they were singing songs from their local area. And that way the songs got spread around a lot. So if you look at if you look at the Kenneth Peacock collection, for example, he collected back in the late 1940s and 50s on into the 60s. He was a folklorist, came to Newfoundland, but he found thousands of songs all around the island. And in some cases, he was finding similar songs in different parts of the island that people were singing. And that's how it turned out. They either sung them on boats or they sung them in the lumber camps. And
Right.
that's the way the music got around.
And I mean, there's a few lumber songs that have worked their way into the shanty repertoire. Like I'm thinking of "Roll the Wood Pile Down," but also Matt would sing he used to sing a really beautiful song with us, "The River Driver," which I think maybe
Oh, the
also,
River Drivers Lament, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
one too, yeah.
And then the other one is the other one's the Badger Drive is a great song.
Badger Drive, yeah, that's right.
That's and the story in the Badger Drive, it was written by a guy by the name of John Devine back in the early 1900s, who was working for the A&D company out in central Newfoundland. Apparently, he was fired from his job, wrote the song, sang it at the annual Christmas concert, and because of the great praise that he heaped on the company, they gave him his job back for life.
Right.
Wouldn't happen today. Yeah, so you know, stuff like that is you know, and it's there's a whole bunch of material. Like for example, the latest album myself and Jim have just done, Wooden Boats, it's called, and Jim wrote half of the album, and the rest of the album is all traditional stuff that I'm singing. But you know, there's one song that I'm singing is called a Sealing Song, with knife and fork and kettle and pan, with spoon and mug and glasses. We take our tea with glasses. You know, we are swilers, toilers bold. We copy from pan to pan, sir. With pelts astern, we shipward go, nor yield to any man, sir. It's all about hunting seals.
Sealing,
So, you know,
yeah.
yeah. And, you know, it's another song I did on it was, again, talking about the railway, building the railway. There's a great song in the North American repertoire, Drill Ye Terriers Drill. Drill ye terriers drill, you work all day. In Newfoundlander put words to it, and now it's drill ye heroes drill, you work all day, no sugar in your tail when you're working on the Newfoundland Railway, and drill ye heroes drill. So, you know, a song was made to suit the local area. Talks about local people, local areas, and Podroy and Clarendon and the Halls Bay Line and stuff.
Hmm.
Which
And that's something sorry, yeah, what were you saying, Matt?
I would say that's pretty common to the shanty kind of practice in itself, that something like those songs would get passed around from place to place and come up with different versions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a prime, to go back to the songs and see, a prime example is We'll Rant and We'll Roar.
Mhm.
You know, it's an old For Well and Due to You Spanish Ladies. But we were in Australia and it came across We'll Rant and We'll Roar like true Queensland drovers, referring to sheep herding.
Oh,
And then down the Boston states, We'll Rant and We'll Roar like true Yankee whalers or Boston sailors. So the words changed and it came to Newfoundland and of course became what it is out of Placentia Bay.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's
it's
one that was
interesting.
escaping my mind.
So yeah, those are things of notice with the shanties. Yeah, the lyrics are definitely meant to be altered. It was the shanty man would be improvising the lyrics or modifying the lyrics while while working on the ships. But also interestingly, the even you can have the same song sung by different performers from different sort of geographical areas, and I feel that the style of singing, the delivery, it tends to be very informed by the kind of music that the singer might have heard growing up as well. So a song sung by an Irish shanty singer might sound pretty different from down in the Caribbean, even though
Oh yeah, very much so.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's very
yeah, and that again is with any song or any singer, a different approach. You're always looking for a new angle on not looking for a new angle, but just exploring your own taste in music as to how you approach a song. Like a prime example for me, just this has nothing to do with shanties or anything like that, but a prime example for me is like the song "Dirty Old Town." It's forever and ever been sung in pubs and stuff like that, and I'd always get requests for it, and I said, yeah, I really want to do "Dirty Old Town," like. So what I did was I stood back from it and looked at the words, and I sing it as a ballad, like a really slow ballad, love song. And that's what it is. It's a love song, and so it's a whole different take on what you hear most bands doing with it. So, and it's the same way I approach any songs. I want you want to put your own stamp on them.
yeah, absolutely.
And by doing so, then you're getting
Adding
other
to the
people
tradition.
interested. You're getting other people interested in what the song is about, because if you sing a song that's commonly known and you're singing in a totally different way, some people are going to turn around and say, "Oh, I never listened to it that way before. I never thought of the words of it like that before," kind of thing. So it's it's an ongoing
Yeah,
procession of progress or whatever.
I've often thought that the when you're learning a tradition of music, it's very important to try to initially to emulate as best you can to sort of learn the vocabulary and really understand those building blocks. And I think once you've got a good grasp on it, then it's important to have your own take on it as well. Like
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so.
yeah. Well, I think we're kind of winding down here. I was just gonna mention a couple of accolades. I read in 2004, Ryan's Fancy was awarded the Dr. Helen Creighton Lifetime Achievement Award by the East Coast Music Association. And then more recently, you've just received the Premier's Medal for Arts and Heritage. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the Lifetime Achievement Award was quite the thing. I mean, if you go on YouTube, you can see the whole shebang of it. With
Hurry, harrow, my bonny wee girl. Hurry, harrow, my fair one. Will you come away with me, love, to be my own, my rare one? Take it all, boys. Thank you, Newfoundland. Thank you, St. John. Thank you.
just recently with myself and Jim, where I got a note from Premier and his people saying that they were awarding us and other people the medal, Premier's Medal for arts and for our contribution to what we've done over the years, just promoting and preserving, I guess, the music and devoting our lives to doing what we do. To me, it's a job of work. It's getting an accolade like that. Obviously, is an honor, but it's also very humbling because there's loads and loads of other people out there who are doing the same thing as I do and are just maybe a little quieter than I am. But it's as I said, it's a great honor to have been recognized.
Well
Absolutely.
deserved.
Yeah, thank you very much for your contributions.
Now, I didn't have to swim any laps to get the medal, though. I didn't break any records.
Just made some.
Yeah, Mason. Yeah, right. Yeah, good pun, man.
Matt, is there anything else you'd want to ask or talk about?
No, I just want to say thanks, because Ryan's Fancy was one of the first bands that really turned me on to, like, I grew up hearing Newfoundland music, but I feel like a lot of the music I was introduced to was very electrified from the 90s era. And when I kind of heard Ryan's Fancy and sort of the more traditional arrangement with the instrumentation, that kind of really struck to me, and the song choices. And that was one of the Ryan's Fancy was one of the groups that really brought me into the Newfoundland music and Irish Celtic music. So
I appreciate it. Thanks, man. Yeah, thank you. And look, if you're around town, if you Wednesday night, I'm going to be at the ship. The session starts at 9, and it's just sitting around the table. But then on Friday, I'm at O'Reilly's 4:45 to 7:45, and then Sunday as well, so 6 to 9. So
yeah. I'll catch you at one of those for sure. I'd love to come down.
Do
and
so.
say
We'll have a
hello.
pint, have a yarn without a
Yeah,
camera
that'd be great.
sticking, without a camera sticking in our face.
Hey, bye.
Look,
Sounds good.
I hope I was of some enlightenment too, because when you got a hold of me, I wasn't sure exactly what you were looking to do or talk about, but I'm glad we had a conversation. It's great.
Yeah, as am I. Yeah, thank you very much. It was really wonderful getting to chat with you.
Okay.
Indeed.
And I think
if I get to Toronto, we'll have to sing some shanties.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we have a mutual friend with Chris Murphy as well.
Oh yeah, no, Chris really well. Yeah.
Yeah, I play with Chris once in a while, and he's playing a lot with David Francie these days too. So
he's a great guy. Chris is really, really solid musician.
Absolutely, yeah, great guitar player.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again for making the time. I'll send you the photo of Sullivan's Gypsies.
Do so, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do so, because I'll put it up in the Ryan's Fancy. I don't maintain the Facebook page myself, the Ryan's Fancy, but there's a couple of guys on the mainland who I just pass stuff along to them and they put it up. So it's my gateway into Facebook without actually being there.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again. Yeah. And thanks, Matt. And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and all that.
Yes, indeed. Okay. All the best.
All right.
Merry
Take
Christmas,
care.
everybody.
Okay.
Bye.